Welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. Today's guest is Joe DiStefano. Joe is an international speaker, fitness expert, and lifestyle coach. He is the host of the Stacked podcast and the founder of RUNGA, an experiential lifestyle brand that empowers individuals and corporations through highly effective and sustainable practices that fuel health, wellness, and performance.
Hi, everybody. One day I got a call from a buddy of mine and a client of mine who just attended one of Joe DiStefano's RUNGA events. He said, Paul, you've really got to check out the RUNGA experience and Joe DiStefano. He was very excited about it. The RUNGA experience really helped me get grounded in my daily practice, and I'm feeling and looking better than ever. Hearing that, I had to have a look into RUNGA, and I was very impressed when I did. So I tracked down Joe DiStefano for a podcast together. Joe and I spent the day together recently enjoying great food, lifting stones, and talking about what makes life special. I think you'll really enjoy our intimate, honest conversation about what makes RUNGA powerful, special, and popular, even amongst the most elite athletes like Ben Greenfield. Our goal in this podcast is to give all of you something you can take away from the RUNGA experience for free and enhance your life. I know my life has been enhanced just by spending one day with Joe DiStefano, and I hope you enjoy him and our dialogue as much as I did. So let's jump into my conversation with Joe. All right, welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. I have an exciting episode today. I'm going to introduce you to Joe DiStefano, the founder of RUNGA, and it's a very, very interesting system. I was first turned on to RUNGA and Joe DiStefano by one of my clients and friends, Jared Picard, who's coached with me for quite a number of years. And Jared's a highly intelligent guy. He's a biodynamic farmer, and he's somebody whose opinion I really trust. And Jared got a hold of me one day and says, Paul, you got to check out RUNGA, man. It's really, really good. And I said, well, what's good about it? And he said some magic words. He said, well, it's really inspired me to do a lot of the things you've been trying to get me to do for years. I said, well, if it got you to do that, I got to check into it.
Yeah.
And so, Joe, welcome to Living 4D, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Paul. Honored to be here.
Thank you. And as I was saying, I'm pretty critical of things because I have a depth of knowledge that allows me to kind of look right through things and see what's fluffy. And, there's so much shit out there, as you know,
Yes.
Flavor of the month and every program in the world for get rich, get slim, get beautiful, quick.
Right.
And so when I looked at your program, well, the first thing I noticed was Ben Greenfield was in the group. And I said, well, if Ben's in there, it's got to be pretty good because Ben's skillfully critical of everything. Right. And then I watched some videos, read the website, looked at the material, and my first thought was, wow, this is really well put together. Yeah. And later, when I talked to you, I got quite a surprise, which I'll let you describe later on, but I went, holy shit, that's really amazing.
Yeah.
And so congratulations on a fantastic program, and having looked at it and talked to you about it, you've put together some of the most important components of health, well-being, mental, emotional, self-management, self-actuation, a lot of key components that I could see right away had to have come from your own life experience. So since a lot of my listeners won't be familiar with you, I'd love to just hear a little bit about who Joe DiStefano is and how did he kind of become the man that he is today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Paul. And, it's really interesting because when I look back at myself and who I am and who I've become as a professional and a person, of course, my life from a young age was definitely health focused. So my family was very health conscious, right? But guess what? In the 80s and 90s, that meant food pyramid, that meant all sorts of things, but the intention was there.
Yeah.
And I think intention is ultimately what's most important, right?
Yeah.
Until, I'll get to this, but my dad had a heart attack right in front of me when I was 14. And, that probably shaped me.
Yes, it would.
More than any education I can tell you about, because ultimately it really threw a wrench. I remember when I was in the hospital, he made it through. He didn't pass away at that point. but the doc said, you better, kiss the steak and eggs goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we don't have that. We drink water and eat salad at my house and eat pasta.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the first time that even at that age, I was kind of like, if those things cause heart attacks, then how did my dad have a heart attack?
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a question mark, but I'm 14. I'm, in high school, whatever. So, but that sort of data point stuck with me.
Yeah, it would. It's a very intense event, and I can empathize with you because my father drowned when I was 8.
Oh my gosh.
And it made me have this deep, morbid fear of the water. So my compensation was I became a triathlete, and I took swimming lessons in the Army, and got to the point where I swam across the Chesapeake Bay. And when I swam across the Chesapeake Bay, which is 4.7 mile swim, I said, okay, that's enough. I can back off now.
Yeah, as you do. So very active growing up, played sports, got really into, I was really into kind of physical sports. My dad is funny. He used to say, when I was a tiny kid, he would say, this kid's going to lift a ton before he can spell it, because I was a very active kid from a very young age, very explosive, got it really into baseball and skateboarding and all sorts of sports. Well, fast forward around that same time as my dad's heart attack, freak accident, fractured skull, traumatic brain injury.
Your father or you?
Me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
So this was the other big thing that shaped who I am today. And, it was a freak accident. Honestly, Paul, I was playing basketball. I don't tell the story very much. So I was playing basketball.
Hey, you're the RUNGA guy, man. Lay it on the table.
Lay it on the table. Let's be vulnerable. Playing basketball. Not a impermanent hoop. So not one of those like portable basketball hoops.
Right.
A real commercial basketball hoop.
Right.
Fell on top of me.
Oh my God. How did it fall?
Just rusted out. It was old. Freak thing.
Wow.
So that carried with it, a lot of trauma as a young kid, waking up, not really knowing what's happening.
Yeah.
Fractured skull, traumatic brain injury, this whole thing. Now, there's a lot of, when that type of thing happens, there's two things. I think as a parent, I could never imagine what my parents went through, but I know that there was a certain sense of like, how quickly can he be okay?
Right.
How quickly can we get this past us?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was an interesting thing because I think I fast-tracked a lot of the post-injury rehab, et cetera, and about a decade later, the wheels started falling off.
Yeah, that's fairly normal for closed head injuries.
Yeah.
I've had several.
We talked about that. You've got more than me, I think.
Oh my God, yeah. Have you heard of Dr. Dan Engel, by the way?
Dan Engel, yes, I've heard of him.
He's a friend of mine. He wrote I think the book's titled The Concussion Repair Manual.
Okay, yeah, I think I might have that in my library.
Yeah,
actually.
He's a world-leading I've referred a number of people to him with really serious problems from either one big event or multiple events. Right. So he's a good guy to keep in your back pocket.
100%. So fast forward, what this taught me when those wheels fell off and conventional medicine was not the solution, right? That actually almost drove me into a deep depression.
It could, especially if they start giving you drugs.
Right. And drugs and grim prognosis, you're going to be Michael J. Fox by 30, these types of things.
Yeah.
Thank God I found some great doctors in the Boston area, and growing up in Boston, I mean, I'm surrounded by some of the best medicine in the world, and found some really great docs that mended me. Now, as a professional, helping people get healthy, fit, well, the traumatic brain injury, once you get through that and you start, now you can walk in a straight line, now you can do these things. It's blessed me with this sensitivity that is so much greater than the average person, that I have an ability to kind of push people in directions that maybe I wouldn't otherwise be able to. And what I mean by that is if I miss a day of physical activity, if I eat too much gluten or sugar, if I miss a night of sleep, the wheels start falling off very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So with traumatic brain injury, these things are just magnified.
Sure.
So even if you have a client that says, "Oh, I sleep 2 to 6. I don't need that much sleep. I can function well."
I hang out with Tony Robbins.
Exactly.
I do sleep deprivation.
Right.
Yeah, right. You're here seeing me because you're a patient now.
Right. It's so I feel like it's allowed me to kind of develop these hypotheses around like it's healthy till it's stressful, or this idea of cumulative stress load.
Yes.
That diet and late nights and
Yes.
all these things culminate in the body.
They do.
And so those two things shaped my sort of vision for how I wanted to help people get well. Now, if we want to go into education, my undergrad's in exercise science.
Yeah.
After exercise science, I opened a gym, and I was working with baseball athletes, and I realized that if you're gonna work with people and you want to be a coach, exercise physiology is not the tool that you need.
No.
You need to be a psychiatrist. You need to be a psychologist.
Yes, and a lot of other things.
And a lot of other things. So I went back to school for psychology, and
Oh, wow, good.
yeah. And what's funny is, though, I didn't finish that degree because my business started doing well, and I felt like I took the nuggets I needed.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
So
It's called practical learning.
Practical learning. And so here I am 16 years later. RUNGA is this culmination of all of these sort of trials and tribulations that I learned. Now, it's funny what you said about the 5-mile swim there in Chesapeake Bay, because I got really into endurance sports, did a really long triathlon. The next day sold my bike. I haven't been on a bike since. That was in 2007. Right?
Yeah, you learned.
I learned. But the funny thing is, so 2007, I kind of that's when the wheels really started to fall off. And I was my fittest, but I was my sickest. And you had a term for that.
Yeah, the fit sick person.
The fit sick person.
Yeah.
I've never been fitter. I've never been sicker.
Yeah.
And so I kind of hung it up, and that's when I was going through a lot of this rehab work to try to build myself back up. Well, 2010, I got involved with a company that was promoting obstacle racing, so like running through the mud, throwing spears, climbing over walls, and it was the yang I needed. Like it was like the bravado. It was like the energy to get me going again.
Might have been also time for you to activate the warrior archetype and express that part of yourself.
Yeah.
The commitment to meeting an objective,
Right.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, 100. It resonated very deeply with me.
Yeah.
And I ended up staying at Spartan for over 8 years.
Wow.
Now, where RUNGA began was my yin in that world. So after a couple of years, I needed that sort of that time down, that calmness, that introspection, that mindfulness, because I felt like I went too far down that kind of more masculine rabbit hole, and I needed that like kind of feminine energy to come back in.
Yeah.
And so over the last 5 or 6 years, I started hosting one event a year. And over the last couple of years, we've done a few more than that. And RUNGA's become what it is. And it's a very grounding experience that really helps people get in touch with themselves so that they can do whatever it is that they do.
The surprise that you hit me with was you took HLC1. Where in the sequence of events did you take that? And that must have been an interesting experience for you.
So it was mind blowing, and it's funny I left that out. So after my degree, I finished my degree in 2007.
Yeah,
I was that sickest, the healthiest sick person. Excuse me, the sickest fit person ever.
Yeah,
and my doctors and things would just say, and this was when the wheels were starting to come off from the head injury, but I hadn't associated the issues I was having with the head trauma at that point. So I ended up signing up for HLC1 out of almost desperation, right? Knowing, and it was my college professors were like, "You guys, you're nuts for going to that." The one or two that had actually heard of it, because it was so contrary to what I had been taught. I was taught low fat, high carb, especially if you're an athlete. Pump in the wheat bread and, keep fat low, whatever. Went to HLC1. Now, that program had profound impacts on me.
good.
And it was a rippling. So I had invested, I grew up with the food pyramid. I've been reading food labels since I was 5 years old, right? And quitting peanut butter because it had too much fat, and, as a kid. So when I go through HLC1 in Boston, everything in there was opposite of what I had learned.
Right. Who was your instructor?
JP Sears.
Oh, well, how cool is that?
Yeah, JP Sears.
The man.
The man. So it was in Boston, and I can't remember how many days it was at this point, but
It's 3-day course.
3-day course. So that course everything in there was outside my comfort zone because it was, I have a degree. I know what I'm talking about. And we did metabolic typing for the first time. And all of a sudden, I remember we walked to Whole Foods at lunch, and JP was talking about my metabolic type and what I needed to do, and talking about butter, like butter.
JP loves butter and chicken. That's his favorite.
He put me on a butter chicken diet.
Right on.
So basically what happened was I was on this extremely high gluten, I'm Italian, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up with this. And, I used to go and I would eat a lot of bread because that's just what we ran on. And funny thing, just anecdotally, I had this rash on my neck my whole life.
Yeah.
2 weeks of a clean diet, and it went away.
A check diet.
So JP pushed me onto this, what I would refer to kind of as keto.
Yeah.
All right. So,
or a fast oxidizer and metabolic typing.
Yep. Fast oxidizer, very protein rich, butter, olive oils, coconut. And, I started to get better.
Yeah.
And I went to my neurologist, and they were like, this is a similar diet to the high fat type of diet used in epilepsy and, some of these conditions. So I started to what happened with HLC1, I probably learned 100 things. When I walked out of the door, I believed 2 of them.
Yeah.
I remember going back and saying, they think that the light from an alarm clock is too much to have during sleep.
It is.
Every 6 months to a year, another 10% of that class came true.
Wow.
Right. As I continued to learn and develop and grow and put some of the things I thought I knew behind me.
It must have been interesting, too, for you to learn the concept of working in and how to look at your balance of masculine relative to feminine energy output or lack of cultivation of feminine, because you were very yanged out.
Yes, absolutely. The zone exercises, I still do them today.
Right on, man.
I remember learning them for the first time in that class. Now I know there's pre-reading at the time, and I knew what they were, but going through them and actually learning them is different than when you read them in the book.
Yes,
and you do them at home, and you think
you think you're doing it, but then you find out from an instructor that you aren't doing it right.
Right, exactly.
That's why we have the training program.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, the reason I brought it up, not so much to market the Czech Institute, which of course I want to do because I believe in what I teach, but when I saw what you had in RUNGA and I was getting such positive feedback, and I saw Ben Greenfield's association and my own client said, this guy's teaching me almost the same stuff that you taught me, but somehow he's inspired me to do it. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And then when I was talking to you and you said I took HLC1, I went, wow, if an HLC1 student can take the concepts and put a program like this together, well, paradoxically, I was patting both of us on the back.
Yeah, well deserved. No, the class, I can say, definitely changed my life. And it was really interesting because, like I said, it was like every year 10% more came true.
Yeah.
And now the knowledge I had prior to that moment is out the window. And, now I'm very clean. I live very clean.
You don't have a rash on your neck?
I don't have a rash on my neck. We have Ethernet cords at the house.
Yeah.
We're all in.
Yeah.
And when you come to RUNGA, we rent an amazing private home that we convert into our own.
Right.
So it is very much a weekend away in Paul Check's house, in
right on, man.
Joe's house, in Ben's house.
Yeah. And
all the bells and whistles that, maybe you see us using in biohacking devices or just areas of space, like your amazing statues and chargers and things outside, these things, exist at RUNGA, and people see them for themselves, and they realize how to incorporate all these things into a healthy, sustainable lifestyle.
Yes.
And when they leave, they're theirs.
In this podcast, you'll hear Joe DiStefano and I talk about the importance of family, community, exercise, mindfulness, meditation, and high-quality food. In fact, Hippocrates said food should be man's first medicine. And in today's busy, hustle-bustle world, many don't have or don't take the time to cook nutritious, organic, whole food meals. But guess what? Organifi has made a wide variety of excellent certified organic products, from superfood drinks to protein supplements, that are quick, easy, and tasty, effective sources of nutrition for the whole family and athletes alike. My family, clients and many of the athletes I coach and train love them, and I'm confident you'll notice a difference in how you feel right away. To check them out, go to organifi.com. That's organifi.com, and have a look at their amazing product line. To get your Living 4D with Paul Chek discount at checkout, use the code capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K 20. That's Chek 20, all caps. To get to know Drew Canoli, the founder of Organifi, listen to my awesome podcast with Drew Canoli, number 64, UBU. Drew Canoli, number 64, UBU, and hear about his amazing book. And I'm sure that when you experience the authenticity and the love and the beauty of Drew Canoli, it'll be natural for you to want to try his products because they're a mirror image of his beauty. Hope you enjoy them. As always, I love your feedback on any of my podcasts and any of the products I share with you here. Lots of love and joy. What I thought was interesting too, because I asked you if RUNGA was had a meaning, like an acronym, like I check corrective holistic exercise kinesiology. But I'd love you to share the story you shared with me about how you got the name RUNGA.
Right. So it was really interesting. So again, when I was part of that company that, exploded from 8 guys sitting at a table to 1 million participants in 20 some odd countries around the world.
Mm-hmm. Spartan racing.
Spartan race. Yeah. The number of flights that I was on was, for a handful of years, it was up there with your numbers, right?
Yeah.
These are professional numbers.
Hardcore
numbers. And again, it's Australia, Barcelona. It's not Boston, New York, And I was burned out.
Yes.
And again, I had just come out of my traumatic brain injury stuff, and I was delicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So about 2013, I took a trip, and I went away for 8 days down in Costa Rica. No cell phones, no computers. It was my first digital detox because I had identified the phone addiction, the email addiction, the what did I forget to do? Who did I forget to please? Where am I going to be tomorrow? This ungroundedness.
Yes.
It was, my phone was the communication. That was how I was getting all this negative information.
The nexus of your life.
The nexus of my life. So I charged my phone and threw the charger out, brought a charged phone that was off. So if I had an emergency, I had a phone, but I didn't want to be tempted to use any of the email or social media. So I was off the grid for 8 days, and I did AM, PM yoga, very hot yoga at the time. And then throughout the day, I would do a ton of breath work and mindfulness, and I would just sit and stare and do a lot of these kind of just grounding practices, spend a ton of time in nature, whitewater rafting, whatever I needed to do to kind of get into my body. Now that AM, PM yoga class was they were like the bookends on the day.
Right.
It was a pretty arduous yoga flow.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the class, chaturanga was this kind of relaxing push-up pose where you might have been flowing for 15 minutes without stopping, and you're just dripping sweat and you're exhausted. You're exactly how I felt before I left home.
Yeah.
And
it's like a circuit workout.
It was like a circuit workout. It was really hard. And but then chaturanga was a big exhale with a push-up. And to me, it was a metaphor for what I was actually doing. It was like my life and the time that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
And when I wanted to, the following year, go away again and do the exact same thing, and I decided to invite friends that happened to be guys like Ben, I didn't know what to name it. And I said, well, chaturanga really resonated with me, but chaturanga, you can't call it that. So,
sounds like a city.
I know. I cleaved
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga. I cleaved off the front, called it RUNGA, spelt it different, made it my own. And very quickly people said, this is my RUNGA tribe, or it's a RUNGA thing, and so I knew it was going to stick. And the year after that, we'd let people sign up for it. And that was how it started.
That's amazing. It's a beautiful story. And, it's also the story of the wounded healer.
Yeah.
The people that work through their own wounds, their physical wounds, their emotional, mental health challenges, to bring themselves to a point of understanding, become authentic teachers, not intellectual copy machines, and there's too many of those out there and misleading a lot of people, as you know. So what I did to kind of take a lot of information and break it down into something that we could do for the podcast to help people really get a sense of RUNGA and you and the components and get some meat and potatoes that they can walk away with, is we broke the anatomy of RUNGA down for the outline. So let's start with the heart of RUNGA.
Right.
The heart. If there's no heart, then something doesn't live. So for those of you listening, what I did is I went with Joe and we broke the anatomy down from that which is the most essential components to that which builds upon those essential components. The analogy I give Joe is when you build a house, you got to start with the foundation before you get to the roof and the chandeliers. So let's get to the foundation and build up.
Right.
So we're actually going to take you on a journey through the components of RUNGA and hopefully inspire you to try some of them on your own. And knowing as much as I do, when you try any one of these things, and I know now Joe's a master motivator, if you go into your own practice with any number of these things and you feel inspired to go meet Joe and his crew at RUNGA, then by all means get Joe will give you the context, but look into it, because I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't think it was really good. So give us the heart of RUNGA.
So the heart of RUNGA really is the environment, the experience, the people, and the energy that's cultivated in this weekend or single day or private event, whatever it might be. The energy at RUNGA is that of, it's extremely safe and nurturing and open. It really gives people permission to be themselves, but feel into themselves.
Right.
And
it gives them the tools to feel in too.
We give them the tools, and we give them, again, that sort of safety net where, it's a very from the second you walk in, you can feel it. You can feel what's happening, and everyone's there often for the same reason.
Do men cry there?
Sometimes.
Because it's safe,
Yeah, it's safe, but it's almost inexplicable. It's the energy that's kind of created is, sure, there's some tears occasionally, but it's not an AA meeting or anything.
No,
it's this environment where people feel that they're finally able to be themselves, and they feel that they are part of something greater than themselves.
Well, you see, the thing is, too, you're bringing people together that have common values.
Exactly.
And goals and objectives and dreams, and probably often common wounds to heal. Have you noticed that when you get a group of people together, there's almost always a common theme amongst them?
It's almost creepy how when you talk to somebody, and we talk to everybody before the event, the immersion event in September, which is our flagship event. We talk to everybody before, and on those calls, we'll dive deep, but sometimes we don't dive real deep. It's as deep as they allow us in.
Yeah, well, that's the best thing. Otherwise, it's too scary.
Right. But when they get to the event and that they feel that sort of nurturing environment and that safe space, we often find out more. And it's very interesting that year over year, there are without question themes in the group that maybe we knew about in part, or maybe we didn't.
Right.
And that allows for people to be surrounded by people that are like them, dealing with these same types of issues, feeling into this community that they're now a part of. And that alone, just tools and toolboxes aside, that alone gives them some intrinsic empowerment that they didn't have before, and some feeling of confidence and self that they can then take to these things that they've maybe been not putting off, but putting off.
Well, two of the most important things in a situation like that is connection and relationship. So the connection, you can connect to yourself and you can connect to other people, but when you have relationship, you have an opportunity to share what's real for you, ask questions, and gain the wisdom and the experience of seeing what other people have worked through and how they've solved those riddles.
Right.
So, having run a number of these types of healing groups myself and healing ceremonies with plant medicines, I find that there's oftentimes as much medicine in the connection and the relationships as there is in the medicine, whichever that might be, breathing, plant medicines, exercise, meditation, whatever. So I think that's a really important component. Without
a doubt, when you have that kind of environment, that environment of, I call it the environment of impossible failure, the interesting thing is then when you incorporate these other practices, and we'll get to some of them, there's this upload that is like they've never experienced.
Yeah.
So if somebody goes into the gym and they want to learn how to do the Turkish get-up, and it's a crowded gym and there's people all over the place and they're trying to learn this thing and maybe their coach is like, no, not quite like that, not quite like that, not quite like that. They've got so much outside of the thing distracting them from learning.
Yeah.
And
Or they're afraid to fail in front of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at RUNGA, when that's stripped away, I've had an easier time teaching Turkish get-ups to overweight, middle-aged men and women that have never really worked out before than professional athletes that allegedly know their body inside and out.
Right.
And so there's this really intense upload of information that's that not only like brings it into reach, but they own it.
Yeah.
It's in their heart.
There's levity and love and connection.
Yeah.
You know, people inspire us. You reminded me of a quote by Audrey Hepburn. She says, "Nothing's impossible. The word itself says, I'm possible."
Hey, that's a great quote.
Yeah. So next is the lungs.
Right.
What's the lungs?
Breath.
Breath.
Breath,
Yeah, man.
you know.
Lungs are for breathing.
Yeah. When you ask me that question, there's only one thing to say. And breath is really at the core of RUNGA. And it was really the practice that brought me out of my little negative place, right? So I had a doc that basically told me that, it's not about showing up. It's about intention. It's about getting in control, and it's about calming your breathing down. And breathing has been a major part of my life, just learning to nose breathe and controlling the pace of breath. And it was really interesting when I first really got into breath, which is when I was going through some of this rehab stuff and learning how to get back on my feet, it jarred all these memories. My grandmother has been a performer her whole life, a singer, a dancer. She's been doing breath techniques with me since I was a baby. My mom, I used to have anxiety before school, and I would have to take 10 breaths before I got on the bus. And so there was this and I think it was the Fruit Loops now, looking in retrospect, but breath is core to RUNGA. And whether we're doing meditation, whether we're doing kettlebells, whether we're on an exercise bike or doing something, learning how to train aerobically, we manipulate, we breathe intentionally, we have different protocols and things to help people feel what we're trying to get them to feel.
Yes.
And breath just runs through it. It's
The
the river.
feeling nature is very, very important because our culture is so trapped in its head.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Jung's consciousness compass, his 4 qualities of consciousness?
Yes.
So it's thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition.
Yep.
So thinking is counterbalance. So just like yin's complementary opposite is yang,
Yep.
thinking is complementary opposed. Its complementary opposition is feeling. But the more you're thinking, the less you're feeling. Right. The more you're sensing, the less you intuit. The more you're intuiting, the less you sense. The more you're feeling, the less you're thinking. And our culture is so trapped in digital technologies, and we're past the information now. We're in the age of context, but we still are heavily steeped in information.
Right.
So people are so actually caught in the structure of ideas and using ideas and expressing and shopping them that they actually get so up in their head, they depart from their bodies and they lose their capacity to feel. And when you lose your capacity to feel, you lose your connection to your body. You lose your connection to your breath, to your digestion, to your musculoskeletal system. And then people actually don't know something's wrong until they've got a disease or something's terribly broken. And they are surprised, like, oh my God, how'd this happen?
Right.
But it's been happening for years.
Right.
But you just didn't know because you were too busy on your computer or your iPhone, right?
Right.
So it's great that you're bringing people into the feeling component because it is the complementary opposite that balances the thinking disease of our culture.
Without a doubt. And that's the recipe, right?
Yeah.
So everything being very hands-on and getting people into their bodies, getting people to feel, giving them the sort of permission to kind of, in many cases, there's also this again, these emotions, these thinking emotions. And when those emotions in the mind, the thought is about shaming about not doing it good enough or not doing it often, whatever the guilt or shame, or there's a lot of negative emotions people have, especially as it relates to incorporating exercise, meditation. I'm not good at it. I don't have time for it. All of these things. And when you just start getting them to feel that what we're actually doing is improving your body's ability to produce energy so that you can actually have even more time. Then they start to really connect. They feel it.
Chasing doctors and pills.
Exactly.
And feeling like shit. Right. Staring at television screens, telling yourself you don't have time to exercise.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And that's the big thing. I mean, I just funny story. I had a guy this week that he said something to the effect of, it must be nice to have time to sauna or something.
Yeah.
And I kind of like went into it and I was like, well, it's Saturday. I'm in the sauna. Like, why is this such a privilege? Mm-hmm. And it was a time thing that he was kind of alluding to, like, must be nice to have time to burn in a sauna or something. Mm-hmm. And after I got to really talking to him, he had watched almost 300 movies in 2019 because that's his hobby.
Well, there you go. There's this
and I said,
sauna. It's a cold sauna.
Yeah. And it's, we're talking about 30 minutes on a Saturday at a sauna. Yeah. We want to, somebody wants to point and say, must be nice to have time to do a sauna.
Yeah.
But upon further discussion, there's massive amounts of time being wasted in so many directions.
Those are classic symptoms of somebody who does not know how to deal with the challenge of their life and the choices they're making. So they use distractions. It's no different than taking drugs to get rid of minor aches and pains that are the results of just not paying attention.
Right.
It's a avoidance tactic.
Right. And that self-reliance and responsibility to govern each minute of the day or to at least do your best during each day to fulfill your purpose and connect with others. It gives people a whole new perspective.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they do have time for these things.
One of the things too, and I'm sure you know this intimately from your work and your just being a human being in the modern era, is most people don't have a purpose outside of what they think they have to do to make money. Right. And most people are so overextended financially that they end up working themselves into submission and don't start living till they get home and have a bottle of beer or alcohol or wine of some kind, or now pot and some kind of mindless television. Mm-hmm. And really, when a person realizes that that's not living and that there's more to life than making money, and there's no worse thing to do than prostitute yourself for money, what I teach people is get clear on what your dream is. And if your work isn't supporting your dream, then you're not living a life with purpose or meaning. And that is a source of disease in itself. Yeah. Because when you have no sense of meaning or direction, you're disconnected. Meaning brings the circle together. So when we have an electrical circuit, you have to have flow through the circuit or nothing moves. So if a person doesn't have a sense of meaning other than this sense of surviving the corporate rat race, then they're going to tell you you're lucky to have time to sauna, but they don't realize that all their time is spent medicating a life that lacks meaning.
Right. And there's also, just like you said about the coming home and watch TV mindlessly or drinking, and there's so much interconnectedness. And I think what's dangerous in some of those scenarios, and I think what RUNGA's helped some people see for themselves, is sometimes there's two things. One of them is we chalk that up to like the hard work that I need to do A, B, and C. So we start to flip a lack of purpose or misdirection into a positive.
Yes.
Into a look at what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And then then maybe there's like and another area that I'm thinking right now is just that there's also folks that do good things like exercise. Mm-hmm. In the context of a unknown silent compensation for some other vacuum.
It's a well-known addiction.
Yeah, spiritual, whatever.
Distraction.
And so one of the interesting things at our events is that we've seen people walk in the door and say, I'm an Ironman triathlete and I do this and I'm training for my next one and I'm going to do this. And by the end of the weekend, they're like, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
And I've realized that was a big thing to kind of make myself feel A, B, and C, or deal with my sugar addiction, and those types of reactions, these types of responses have been pretty consistent. And so this getting people in touch with what their objectives and intentions and how they're spending their time and energy has been pretty core.
Hi guys, in this episode you'll hear Joe DiStefano and I talk all about the key elements of a holistic, grounded, vital lifestyle, including the importance of organic whole food meals. But eating organic whole foods isn't enough for most people, because one of the first things to go when we are under stress or have not been fortunate enough to eat organic raw produce is our digestive enzyme production. When our stomach stops producing hydrochloric acid, we can't break down proteins effectively, which opens the door wide for parasite infections, food intolerances, low energy states, and not to mention challenges with our bowels and cognitive performance. We often find that eating vegetables with the fiber they contain makes us feel gassy and bloated. This can all be alleviated completely or significantly by using top quality digestive enzymes and probiotics, and I've never found a better product line to enhance your digestion, energy production, metabolism, assimilation, and elimination than the Bioptimizer line. I use them every day myself and my family and my clients and athletes, most of them that I've been able to turn on to them. All use them with great success. I can't recommend them enough, honestly. Living 4D with Paul Chek listeners get a huge 27% discount on the upgraded digestion package, consisting of 4 great Bioptimizers products that I actually personally use. To get your discount and shop around for their amazing products and see what they have for you, go to BIOPTIMIZERS.com/4, capital D, capital L, and at checkout, use the code capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K, 10. That's check 10, all caps. That's BIOPtimizers.com/4, capital D, capital L. At checkout, all caps, check 10. For an amazing learning experience and to meet the co-founder of Bioptimizers, check out the Living 4D episode number 55, Wade Lightheart, Digestion, Enzymes, Probiotics, and Enhanced Well-Being. Not only will you hear Wade explain the advanced technology used in the creation of Bioptimizers' excellent enzymes and products, you'll be amazed at the deep wisdom and beauty of Wade Lightheart, and you might be surprised to know this guy made it all the way to Mr. Universe as a vegetarian bodybuilder, and I don't think anybody other than Bill Pearl himself has ever done that. He is a truly special, highly intelligent man. So if you really want to get a sense of who's behind these Bioptimizers products, have a listen to the episode, and feel free to check out the website. I use them all the time myself. I love them. Excellent products. I'm excited to be able to share them with you. Enjoy the show today. Well, I think our previous discussion of thinking versus feeling is related to values.
Yeah.
And a lot of our emotional states that we have, negative emotional states, if you want to classify, negative emotions aren't really negative because all of emotions are informative. But when a person starts tapping into their feeling, they start becoming aware of what the values that they have been living are versus the values that really actually create more freedom in their life. And when a person that's been using athletics as medication realizes that it's actually not creating freedom anymore, they can have a lightning flash of realization that, maybe less triathlons and more time walking in nature, or just being in my sauna, or giving myself permission to not have to think about anything might be the next phase of my growth edge or my development. And so bringing people to that realization is real medicine, in my opinion. That's real medicine.
Yeah.
Next in our anatomy train here is mitochondrial optimization. So you have several things in there: cold, heat, kettlebell, and aerobic. Can you walk us through? Tell us, in your opinion, what do you mean? Of course, I know what you mean, but for the listeners, what do you mean when you say mitochondrial optimization?
Yeah. So we want to get their bodies better equipped to produce energy.
Yeah.
So I think this whole thing we just got over talking about time is actually, this feeling that we don't have time for anything is also intimately related to a declining energy producing system in a lot of our bodies.
Yeah.
Right. So our mitochondria, which is the workhorse of the cell, producing a lot of our, especially of our aerobic energy.
Yeah.
We're having numbers drop, quality drop, dysfunction, lots of free radicals being produced. And so what the body needs to become more efficient at energy production is manipulations of oxygen, which would be our aerobic training, experiencing things like hot and cold, so that the body has to kind of work to adapt and find homeostasis. So when we think about mitochondrial optimization, which is ultimately what it is, it's all of these practices that help us live longer and help us produce energy more efficiently so that we can hit all of the check marks we need to hit each day, still have energy to go home to the family and be the father, be the husband, be the wife.
And not be on Viagra at 20 years old. It's amazing. I've had two 18-year-olds reach out to me because they're asking me how to get off of Viagra. And I'm like, you kidding me? You're 18 and you're on Viagra, and they're both athletes. I'm like, my God, when I was 18 years old, I could use my penis as a dinner bell. It was like steel.
Yeah.
I was like trying to get the thing to go away. But, one of the things we haven't mentioned that I think is important, one of the big problems with mitochondrial issues is people chronically using antibiotics for so much because mitochondria are bacteria. They're bacteria in our cells. Right. And it's well shown in the research that antibiotics actually wipe out your mitochondrial population. And research also shows, interestingly, that exercise can increase mitochondrial populations by 300% in as little as, I think, 4 weeks of aerobic exercise. So the 2 points that I'm making is you have the right recipe there for mitochondrial stimulation, but a lot of people don't realize that a lot of what conventional medicine pushes off for every pimple and bump has led to a lot of energy deficits in people, and the way they live and the way they eat is not replenishing that. So it seems to me that you, again, have brought a form of real medicine in, and if people get fit and do the kind of things that both of us teach, they don't need to be on antibiotics all the time.
Right, 100%. And it's so interesting because in the event, we might give them the tools, right? We're going to teach you how to do this type of aerobic exercise. And again, we'll be doing certain types of breath work while you're on the bike and doing all sorts of really creative, cool stuff. But we'll get to food. But when we get to meals, these are the conversations that are happening over dinner.
Yeah.
So, and this is pretty invaluable, right? When Ben's at the table and, our other experts and myself and the conversations at the dinner table, people have said have been some of the most impactful conversations of their lives because this is where the rubber's hitting the road.
And that's, if you look at the history of the dinner table in families, it's usually a time, at least in my experience of families and having studied ceremony and family structure, the dinner table is where intelligent, meaningful conversation about something happens, whether it be what was the meaning of, the Matrix, or what did you get out of it, or what's the challenge that you're facing, or something like that. So because a dinner time experience is really tribal connection through the ceremonial experience of eating, and worship, worshiping, if they're conscious, worshiping the fact that we're eating life and life has given itself to us. So there's a lot of bonding, you're sharing deep experiences, you're sharing food, you're sharing conversation, you're sharing energy, you're sharing gesture, you're sharing facial expressions. You're sharing farts. That's fun.
Hopefully not too many.
Well, it depends on, how good your gut is. But
although Ben is known to floss at dinner for whatever.
Is that right? That's cute. I'm known to use toothpicks all the time. But yeah, that's a beautiful component. I really love that. And, when I have people up here for healing ceremonies and work, dinner is one of our favorite times together, and everybody loves Penny's cooking. So I've never had anybody come here that didn't like Penny's cooking. Unfortunately, you guys don't know this, but today the power went out up here. So Penny brought our gas barbecue up here and ran out and bought us a generator to power my vaporizer in the kettle.
Amazing lunch.
Yeah.
Great.
So within your mitochondrial optimization plan, we've got a few components: cold, heat, kettlebell. you want to kind of break some of those down and talk about them?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, hot, cold, might be more self-explanatory. So we do ice baths and we really, we'll actually have a whole bunch of the tubs, and sometimes we'll do different temperatures. So people over the course of the 3 or 4 days or however long, they can get braver and braver and braver. And we really kind of teach them how to breathe, how to get into the tub, how to make this their own, and talk a lot about the benefits of cold showers and hot and sauna. But as it relates to the exercise component, it's really, we call it physical longevity training, right? Because I think a lot of the issues that people have, and it's always funny when people say, maybe on an email or something, I got to get in shape for RUNGA. And it's just, I always chuckle at that, because one of the things that I think we do at RUNGA the best is we show people just how exercise, this pursuit of health over the years, and this pursuit of fitness have gotten cross-wired.
Yeah. It's become more of a dick swinging contest.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're a male, right?
Yeah.
How big is your bench press?
Right.
How fast can you run the 40? And, I won't give the rest of it just to keep it a little more grounded. But, the male psyche. But even we've got so many masculinized females in the exercise community. They're just guys with tits. And they suffer the same problems, except their bodies aren't designed for that. When a woman starts dropping down, around 13% body fat, she usually starts to have a collapse of her menstrual cycle and hormonal dysregulation. And I've worked with countless numbers of them. And I think this, what I'm saying is that a lot of the kind of the exercise consciousness today is how badly can you torture yourself? Exactly. And if you're not really in pain, then you're a pussy and you're not really exercising. So, you're not in my club.
Exactly. And then even apart from that, it's the relationship with that form of masochistic exercise is in many cases a compensation because I went out and had pizza last night.
Well, it is.
There's this intimate tie to lifestyle that's a negative connotation. It's a negative relationship.
They're negotiating with God for the sin.
That's exactly what they're doing. And so whether you go to the gym or you don't, there's like guilt, shame, very negative energy. So at the core, what we're trying to do at RUNGA is kind of make it clear that the traditional method of aiming to get fit, if we have a pyramid that's our fitness, over the last 15 years or so, I think especially, we tend to believe that the key to fitness is working really hard, maybe to the point that you feel like you're going to throw up or that you're so sore the next day. So what we're doing is we're trying to pile fitness on top of the pyramid, right? Our fitness is here. I got to work harder for every inch. Work harder for every inch. When it comes to mitochondrial optimization or fat adaptation and intermittent fasting, which is another component that RUNGA condones. We don't make it mandatory if people don't want intermittent fast, but we make it a safe place for them to get into that or start with a fatty coffee or something. Now, we open the doors to a possibility that this method of exercise that in many cases is not making us feel well, feel happy, or get fitter, wouldn't it be nice to bump that up from below? And so how we do that on the aerobic level is we do intervals with light breath holds, and we teach people how to create a physiological strain on the body as it relates to CO2 and oxygen without having their heart rate at 200 beats a minute. Right. So we're kind of building this base. And when people leave a workout at RUNGA, it's close to a work in. They have more energy than they did before the workout.
Yeah, well, that's the definition of a work in. Right. I tell people the best exercise in the world is one you're willing to do regularly.
Right.
I don't care if it's walking or climbing something or whatever it is. It's just engaging your body and caring for it. And there's so much to learn about oneself through exercise. Emotionally, mentally, kinesthetically. It's, so many people today, even people that are avid exercisers, are really out of touch with their bodies. I mean, I've worked with a lot of the best athletes in the world, and I am doing an analysis on them. I'll say, tip your pelvis forward, and they don't know how to tip their pelvis forward. They'll tip it backwards, right? And I think, no, forward. Pretend your pelvis is a bowl full of milk. Pour it out over your belt buckle, and they'll try this for minutes and can't do it, which is actually called sensory motor amnesia. Their brain has lost contact with that movement pattern, and people get stuck in these rigid exercise routines, not realizing that the variety of movement that they're using is very, very limited. And that's why I developed my primal pattern system. I said, look, there's 7 key patterns you have to do to keep a body healthy: squatting, lunging, bending, pushing, pulling, twisting. And as you know, there's a myriad of variations on those 7 patterns. And then gait, walking, running, and walking, jogging, and sprinting. And so you get people that are only distance runners,
Right.
but they can't do anything else.
Right.
Or they only lift weights, but they really belong in a yoga class.
Right.
Or they're yogis that tie themselves in knots, but they've got instabilities all over the place and they don't have enough strength. So, getting that movement variety and just giving yourself permission to do whatever feels good, and having sort of a menu of, all you got to do is look out the window. There's someone riding a bike, there's someone playing tennis, or someone at a golf course. It's not that hard. It's just really just give yourself permission to do whatever feels good, and exercise in such a way that you walk away from it feeling vitalized, gratified, and nourished by it.
Right.
But one of the most common comments I used to get when I owned and worked in physical therapy clinics is that people would come in. One of the first things they would say to me is, "You're not going to make me exercise, are you? I hate exercise." I said, "Well, you just don't understand how to use exercise then." So it's great that you're teaching people how to engage themselves through movement. So it's not only mitochondrial optimization, it's really body, mind, spirit optimization.
Without a doubt. And it's so interesting because one of the things that I really try to teach, and we also have a very sophisticated, pretty elaborate mobility practice, right? Now, the key to that is, and the primal movement flows 100% in there. We preface it with a hypothesis that beginning with the specific adaptations to impose demands, something I took from my degree, right? Something I took from my undergrad in exercise physiology. But the body tends to adapt to the imposed demands. So that means it adapts to what we impose on it most frequently, right? And everything else we can kind of throw away, right? If I never throw a baseball, then my needs for those patterns is minimized, right? So one of the things that we really try to teach is just this massive disparity between the demands of life and the demands of our exercise, right? And even apart from that, if we look at how we're using our body on a daily basis, we're not using our eyes as an example.
Right.
We're not using our eyes to look around left, right. It's very centered. It's very close vision.
Yeah.
And a lot of the motor programs, like the basic sling systems, when I take a step with my left foot, my right arm moves, right?
Yes, yeah.
This basic, in many, 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 many people, it is not optimized.
No, my God, no. And a lot of that's due to inflammation in glands and organs. It's shutting them down.
Right.
They don't realize that their exercise injuries and problems are coming from internal dysfunctions, which is coping strategies and or just a lack of awareness.
Yeah, 100%. And we talk about how breath, a proper breath should move those internal organs a couple of centimeters, and that creates a lot of vitality.
It does. It gives them a massage 25,900 times a day on average.
And we're all water.
We're 70%. When you die, they say you come in as a plum and you leave as a prune. So the average person when they die is about 55% water based on studies I've looked at, and the average child is born at 75% water.
75% water. So when water doesn't move, it gets stagnant, it gets stuck.
It does.
And just like what you're talking about, we get this massive dysfunction. Now, when the eyes are not being used in a variety of different ways,
they get weak.
Yeah. Eye movement, we talk about the suboccipitals and how this basically creates movement. One of the trends that I see is that when these things are disconnected, so there's so much, we say free medicine, but there's so much free movement. So in other words, if I go for a run or a hike or whatever, and my brain stem and my physiology, my eyes being connected to my system and creating these sling systems and moving our limbs, when that's optimized, there's a lot of movement we don't have to work real hard for. If my eyes look right, my body knows I'm going that direction. Yeah. But when that's shut down, we actually have to work We have to work for every inch, right?
It also creates insecurity at a deep level in the body, because if your the eyes are the chief directors of the motor system. The whole motor system is actually oriented around breath, because that's the key survival mechanism. But the eyes direct the motor system.
Right.
And that's, anybody that trains athletes knows that. And that's why we use head fakes. Because people think if our eyes are going that way, we must be going that way, right? But if the eyes and the motor system are not integrated, it creates the same fear as if you were walking on very slippery ice.
Right.
And you lock up. And so your whole body becomes rigid, your breathing becomes tight. And a lot of that kind of stuff is sedentary living or too narrow of environmental exposure. You get up, you go to work. You look at your iPhone in the morning, you go to work, you stare at a computer all day, you come home, you stare at a television, and that's the extent of your visual activity and stimuli, which means that your body's following the same plan.
Right. And you get convinced that your body's working against you and that you need the jackhammer for half an hour before your workout to loosen up your muscles.
Yeah.
When that tension is that, like you said, it's like you're walking on ice.
And a lot of these people are spending truckloads of money on chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapists to palliatively care for the symptoms of what these kinds of things we're talking about, which are, as you know, well addressed in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, because that was my manuals I realized after many years, I'm like, I have to tell the same things to people all the time because they're at the base of almost every injury and health problem.
Yep.
Why not just give it to the public for $25? And, we're at the point now where we're really teaching people things through your program, my program, and programs like this, what are actually instinctual to people living in a natural environment.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, it would be like if you were to go teach a Aboriginal how to use his eyes, he'd laugh at you like, dude, I can get a bird out of the sky with a slingshot at 80 meters.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking right through you right now.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
I can see your ancestors. It's great. I mean, I love it. So we've talked about cold, we've talked about heat. And one of the things people don't realize about cold and heat therapy is that the arteriovascular tree is a muscular system. And when you're living in all these temperature-controlled buildings all the time and you take hot showers all the time, your arteriovascular system gets very weak. So you see people getting edema pooling in their legs at early ages. When you're right on airplanes, that's a real bummer because it cuts the circulation off down in your lower legs.
Right.
You see people having to wear compression socks. You see bruising easily, varicose veins, and a lot of stuff that's really the product of a weak vascular tree. But when you take a cold shower or an ice bath, that whole vascular system opens wide. The arterial system rushes that blood to the surface. And when you get cold long enough, then you trigger a hunter's reflex and the system contracts. So if you go hot, cold, you're actually doing an expansion, contraction. So it's kind of like an arteriovascular gym. And since every cell in your body is fed by that system, it's a good idea to keep it healthy. Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen this. A lot of people, I say, you need to take cold showers. Oh, I hate cold showers.
What, are you out of your mind?
Oh, no. And what cracks me up is like I've had people write to me going, well, I searched Google and found doctors all over the place saying you should never use cold water. And I say, yeah, now go search hot water and you'll find the same damn thing. So why don't you grow up and be an adult and pay attention to what your body's telling and remember that you hired me to teach you how to get healthy. So instead of researching the internet to avoid getting into a cold shower, get real. Get wet. Yeah. You're soaking wet on the inside, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, and the cold is so interesting because I think people really come to realize how much silly fear they have about it.
Oh, totally.
And how much judgment or how much just how uncomfortable they are with getting a little uncomfortable, but people get addicted to it.
Yeah.
People really feel the difference quickly.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite things about cold because it's empowering to do it for the first time and you immediately feel amazing.
Yeah.
But it's our modern world, when we look at, it doesn't matter if we look at wine. I was, talking to somebody the other day about dry farm wine. It's like you deprive wine of a little bit of water and you dry farm it, and guess what? It becomes more nutritious.
Right on.
So this idea that if we want to live a long time and we want our body to be optimized and to create the systems and the proteins that it needs to be optimized, we can't just be cool all the time. We can't just be in the temperature controlled room all the time. We can't be never having a need to fight our way back to homeostasis.
Yeah.
So getting hot, getting cold, getting the heart rate up, getting the heart rate down.
Yeah.
This is all incredible for the body, as you know.
I got to tell you a funny story about how I got onto cold showers. Now, as a therapist, all the way back in sports massage therapy school, we studied cryotherapy because it's so essential to wound healing. And so I did quite a lot of study in cryotherapy and the science and the use of it. And this is, I'm talking 1986, and I read a book by the author Knight, I think, on cryotherapy, which even if it was read today would be a very good book because it's based on, studies of people, falling in cold water and circulatory, so all the things you need to know to know about healing. And so the funny part is I'd been using cryotherapy and ice baths and working with, hamstring tears, and had ice baths in the clinic. We had an ice tub, and the athletes didn't like it, but it was work. It helped very lot. But I always had this impression that I didn't need it because I was healthy and fit.
Right.
And so probably about 16 or 17 years ago, I was on a long seminar tour through Australia, and I stayed at a buddy's house, and he had this beautiful, beautiful, practically a mansion, him and his girlfriend, right in the Sydney Harbor with gorgeous views.
Yeah, amazing.
And I just happened to get there when their water heater died. And I got there the day after the water heater died. I arrived on a weekend, and I can't remember what happened, but the plumber didn't show up for like 5 days. And so it was winter, and Sydney can get pretty cool in the winter.
Right.
And most people don't realize that, but it's kind of like, San Diego. It can get cold enough that it's definitely not summer. And so I got up in the morning, and there was no choice but a cold shower. I don't give a shit. I'm an ex-paratrooper. A little cold water ain't going to kill me. And so I just jumped in there, and the water was damn cold. I mean, it made my scalp go numb in about 1 minute.
Yeah.
And I did my normal thing. I said, I could tough it out, no big deal. And that was back when I had a really bad coffee addiction from all the jet travel time zone changes. And I was like pretty tired at a core level from constantly moving on airplanes. And we've talked about how devastating that can be after a few years. And so I got out of that shower, and I felt so damn alive and so awake. And I felt like I'd had a double shot of espresso. And the first thought through my mind is, I've got to do that tomorrow. And you know what? I can tell you the truth. I've never taken a hot shower since.
You're kidding.
I have never taken a hot shower since that day. The only time I've used hot water is Epsom salt baths in my nice big tub here at the Heaven House for the therapeutic effect. But I have never taken a hot shower.
100% cold? Or?
As cold as that son of a bitch will go. I do it in Sweden. I do it in New York. Penny can tell you, I come to bed ice cold, don't I, baby? Yeah.
I bet you sleep well.
I do. And it enhances your sex drive very well too.
Mm-hmm.
When you need some oomph, you stay in that cold shower for a good 10 minutes, and your partner may not like it. Well, the warm-up's going on, but the thing to do is jump in together.
Right.
And that doesn't go well at the house. Some people in the house don't like ice cold showers.
Yeah.
But, the point I'm making is
it's that same system.
I came across this by shall we say, the divine circumstance of the situation. And I kind of was kicking myself like, why am I so dumb? I know all about cryotherapy. I use it with my patients, but I wasn't using it on myself because I had too much ego and thought I didn't need it. Yeah. But I tell you what, man, I think cold water therapies they're like sleep. They're freaking free.
Free medicine.
And powerful. And they increase androgens. They aid recovery. They stimulate the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. It's fucking magic.
It's really magic. And it teaches you how to deal with a little bit of stress.
A little bit of discomfort. Life's full of this shit, man.
Right.
If you don't want to medicate it.
Right. It's, it's this sort of this tool that we can use as a nervous system calibration for the day. So, if you've been comfortable again all morning and then you go to your boss and your job that maybe isn't so comfortable, it's like you need that little like confidence boost. I was laughing to myself when you told that story because I had a funny experience coming home from Iceland just recently, and the water was pretty cold there.
Oh, yeah.
As you can imagine, told you about the ice baths. But when I got back, we stopped at my mom's house in Boston, and her hot water heater was broken.
Cool.
Right. So I was cold in Iceland, taking ice baths at the gym because it's a thing to do. I get home, I actually kind of wanted a hot shower, right?
I don't blame you, but I get it.
And my mom doesn't have hot water, so I was like, this is so weird. We had all this flight craziness, so it took us forever to get home. I walk into my house. I've now not had a hot shower in like 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
There's no hot water in my house. I was like, what is the universe doing to me?
Just slowing your aging process.
Yeah. It was just so, I was like, this is so divine because I take a lot of cold showers.
Yeah.
And now for this entire week I've wanted, and so it's funny when, there's some divine intervention. It just says, hey, stay the course no matter what's going on in your life. Just keep on the cold, man.
And sometimes discomfort that's therapeutic is truly therapeutic.
Right.
We've come to the point where we want instant gratification for every itch, scratch, and bump. And one of the things I teach my students and my clients and patients is your discomfort is your body talking to you, giving you feedback about the choices you've made. And so if you've got a rash, it means something. If your back aches, it means something. If you're tired and you shouldn't be tired, it means something. If your dick doesn't work, it means something. If your pussy's dried up, it means something. If your nose is running all the time, it means something. And that's what it means to have a relationship with yourself, is start paying attention. Okay, what did I eat yesterday? Oh, I had a box of Oreo cookies and my nose is running like a tap all the time. That's an immune reaction. Right. So it's just, all I'm saying is if people just pay attention to the fact that there is so damn much wisdom. With all the science we have, we still know less about the cell than we do know about a single cell.
Right.
I mean, the depth of the wisdom inside the human body is wild.
Right.
And everybody keeps running to people that are going to give them pills and tell them not to do. I say, don't go to your doctor and ask what you should take. Ask your doctor what you should take away, and you'll do a lot better.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, that's the wrong place to go to ask that question.
Right.
But,
well, the same doctor that said stay out of the cold, also said that that's stuff he knows has nothing to do with your diet.
Yeah, here's your anti-inflammatories and here's your antibiotic.
Right,
and,
right.
Oh, by the way, we won't tell you that you're going to be energetically dead after this.
Yeah,
and use your microwave. It's faster.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's a really great lesson for people is just the body and brain and mind and spirit are smarter than we can even comprehend.
Totally, man. It's the whole fucking universe working through us.
Right. It's intense.
You can't even be here without the whole universe.
You can't.
You are the entire universe in a nexus point of consciousness.
Right.
And when you spend time with your eyes closed and monitoring your breathing and feeling your breathing and engaging, the neat thing about cold water therapies is you find out right away, as you've alluded to, but not said in these words, your mind will tell you not to do it,
right,
but your body will tell you thank you.
Right.
And you learn from simple things like that. I've got to stop listening to my head so much because it's got a lot of fears that turn out not to be true. Like I told you, people saying in physical therapy clinics, I don't want to exercise, I hate exercise. They have a fear, but I show them every time. It wasn't true.
Right.
And so when your health's in trouble and your relationships are in trouble, start paying attention to what your heart says. Pay attention to what your gut says. Pay attention to what your posture says. Pay attention to what your sense of inspiration and motivation says if you did what you wanted to do at a pace and an intensity that feels joyous to you instead of giving yourself this idea it's going to hurt and not even doing it.
Right.
It's an interesting time in the development of human beings.
It really is. And I think that, that sort of when you teach people how to unlock the system or move a little bit better or get fitter, feel that energy boost, and it's not the beat down, and it's not that horrible experience that leaves you sore, it's in no way related to what you ate last night.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's a completely different relationship.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that people walk away, especially after our long weekends, it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
It's a different perspective on what this activity is, what it's doing, who it's for.
It's realization married to vitalization.
Yes, right. Yes, right on.
So, Joe, what a beautiful program, and I'm really digging our conversation. Thank you, man.
So much
I
fun.
love your journey too, and I love how you've synthesized it, and I love seeing how you've taken HLC1, embodied it, and grown it, and really brought it into something very, very unique and powerful and beautiful and simple, but complex enough that it isn't so simple that you don't, you're not inspired to go deeper.
Right.
You know, if it's too simple, like tying your shoe, who wants to, study tying your shoe once you know how to do it?
Right.
But some of the things like breathing, they're simple. We're all breathing, but there's a lot of depth to some of these simple things. I mean, something as simple as cold water therapy and the applications, there's volumes written on stuff like that.
Right.
In physiology texts. But, our next stop on the anatomy of Runga is...
I don't even remember what organ it was.
Well, this one would be the stomach.
The stomach. Okay.
We're at the food. It would be the stomach. It would be the entron, mouth to anus. Let's go mouth to anus. Okay. What happens mouth to anus at Runga? Do they have poopy policemen?
The cops aren't out. So the Runga experience is, dinners are really extremely elaborate, family-style dinners with everybody joining and very amazing discussions. The food is, of the highest quality that you could possibly get your hands on, prepared by chefs that are incredible and very aware of what we're doing. And that's a challenge, just finding chefs that are able to cook to our standards. And we do all sorts of, basically any dietary restrictions, et cetera, they're all taken care of. But food as it relates to Runga, when you wake up in the morning, we've got this awesome, we're big on coffee, we're big on tea. Mm-hmm. We've got this pretty elaborate supplement optimization bar, right? So you can make your coffee, you can put whatever you want in it. Mm-hmm. You can take all the supplements in the world, whatever you get your hands on. And we've got all sorts of optimization too. I mean, we're doing IV drips, NAD. So we cheat too. So we teach you all these things. Mm-hmm. And then the food is incredible. But we also kind of have all these other devices at your disposal. So in the morning while you're having your coffee, maybe you're getting pulse electromagnetic field therapy. Maybe you're getting red light therapy. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're getting a Myers cocktail drip, whatever it might be. So you're really optimizing your cells and your nutrition right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. The meals are great, and dinners, like I said, is that's really where the magic happens.
Yeah, that's great.
Dinner table.
So the what's the experience from the food that you are hoping that the guest takes home?
I think that we're trying to really get them to understand the role that food plays in our lives, and when we feed them the highest quality food that we can get our hands on, and we remind them that this is because they deserve it. Yeah. This is because our bodies deserve to be given what they need to thrive and what they need to be optimized. And I think a lot of people, when they're making decisions as to where they grocery shop, but also how they invest their money. Yeah.
And when you invest money in organically farmed food, you're investing in the restoration of the planet, of the soil.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize every dollar you spend on commercially farmed food is a dollar you spent to destroy this planet.
Right. No, exactly. And
the vegans and the vegetarians don't realize if they're eating commercially raised food, they're just poisoning the hell out of themselves and contributing to the destruction of the very animals they're often trying to protect.
I know it. And that whole dogma, that whole ism is just, I mean, maybe there's enough podcasts on it. I won't offer my 2 cents, but I think that we're getting more and more distant from a diet that is nutritious. And whether or not we decide to fill our plate with plants or animals or both, ultimately, is this the food that you feel is going to optimally nourish your soul and your body?
Yes.
And that's what we want to connect you with at RUNGA.
Isms are ideas.
Right.
They're mental constructs. They're belief systems. So when you're eating in an ism, you're actually feeding a thought form, and often at the expense of your own health. And there's so much research, so-called research out there supporting this stuff. But, if you don't have the knowledge to understand the study design and look at the factors that are involved in producing the outcome of the research, then you're just believing an outcome with not knowing how you get it, which is like someone saying, all you got to do is invest a certain amount of money in this stock and you'll get rich. But, 2 months later, the whole company collapses and you're broke,
right,
because you didn't do your due diligence to do the research to say, is this really true?
Right.
And who's tried it and what's the results? And so one of the things that I like, you mentioned coffee and tea. Now, a lot of people are going, well, that's not very healthy. And I've had a lot of people criticize me because I drink espresso and vaporized tobacco and herbs. And I tell them, and I'm leading to a point. And the point is that when your approach to health becomes so critically and dogmatically defined that you aren't enjoying being healthy, it's fanaticism.
Right.
And there's another ism, fanaticism. So what I love is that you're teaching people all the essential components of health, but you're leaving enough freedom for a person to, when you're healthy, you can play, right? I like we talked about this morning, I can enjoy 1 shot of espresso a day. That's my threshold, right? If, that's, the needle hits yellow on the tachometer there. If I cross the yellow, I go into the red, and the red is when things start falling apart. And I know myself, if I need more coffee than 1 shot, it means I either need more cold water, I need to spend some time doing Tai Chi or breathing, or I'm working too hard, or I'm not sleeping enough, or I'm eating things that are bogging my system down, or whatever it may be. But instead of just making excuses and drinking more coffee and getting yourself into an addiction, when you have those feelings in place and that instinctual awareness in place, then you actually have the internal capacity to say, okay, I'm having the urge to drink more coffee than I know I should, so now I need to look at what it is that I'm overlooking,
right,
or not giving myself, that's ultimately going to create the freedom to keep drinking the coffee without getting addicted to it.
Right, 100%. And I think that, I guess, starting with the isms thing, and I think there's so many of the isms now, and I think there is this massive deficit of positive community, and these constructs are providing communities.
Yes, they are.
And
they're extended families for people that have broken families.
Exactly. And then, so that is a massive issue. And as it relates to our guests, people are jumping between these camps. And they don't know. It's so darn confusing that when you come to an event or spend a week with us or a day with us, and you're going through your blood work and you're realizing what the body's telling you, maybe you're sitting with Ben or whoever, Dr. Mike, it's this permission to not be a part of those communities and be a part of this community or any community that is healthy and fruitful. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that, as it relates to coffee, big coffee drinker, today was a funny situation.
Oh yeah, tell the story.
So I'm a big coffee guy as well, but the funny thing is I generally wake up in the morning, I have at least an hour of different types of work that I do on myself way before coffee, right? Because
activation,
where I get the motor running. And this morning, I drove down here. It's a couple hour drive. And so I pulled the shot of espresso, but I put in the cup holder. Like, we'll see when I choose to drink it. And about halfway here, I get a note from Paul that he's making espresso when I get here.
Yeah.
So I leave the cup in the cup holder and I drive the whole way and avoid the coffee. I walk in the door, and as Paul said earlier in the show, is
Power went out.
power was out and there was no coffee. And so
I said, sorry, buddy, I wanted to make you an espresso, but we had a power outage. And I'm like, shit. And you go, well, guess what? I made a shot for myself and it's sitting in my console. I said, well, you should go get it if you want it because I already had one before the power went out. And I didn't even know the power was going out. I was just, all of a sudden I'm working away and boom, everything just goes off. I'm like, what the hell? This is a bad day for the power to go out.
But a big part of this, and a big part of, I think, what people, whether they drink coffee or not, at Runga, it's this idea. One of the big teachings that we teach and that I teach is just protecting this first hour and a half,
It's sacred,
2
man.
hours of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can backload some rituals into that time, and as you said, like do no harm,
Yeah.
like don't look at the CNN right now or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't look at the TV.
Don't start with the bad news.
Don't start with the bad news.
It's mostly
or your email.
manufactured.
Don't start with anything like that. Just start with you. And I think that, what people come to realize is the ritual of coffee
Yeah.
ultimately and how it can be a very mindful practice. I know you're like me and, you've got the Paul Check special roast beans
Yeah.
and, I'm sure you grind them fresh and maybe you weigh them out.
Absolutely, man.
And so there's this whole thing that I really love and that I really think grounds my day. And whether it's making coffee or walking the dog, I think these rituals, I think, are something that people do take from our experience that help them kind of anchor
Sure.
some why and purpose behind
Yeah.
whatever activity it might be.
It's also, we're in such a busy world interacting with, so much communication and therefore other people that we spend so much time out of ourselves, right? Out, projecting ourselves out into relationships, emails, texts, tweeters, twatters, twitters, what the fuck ever you have.
Grammars.
Yeah, some damn thing. But for me, it's really that morning ritual is when I get to be with me. And I devote about an hour every morning to my prayers and to giving thanks and just connecting to the universe and just worshiping the magic and the mystery and the awe of life. And I find if I don't give that to myself, I find it hard to be with people. I find it hard to interact because I feel as though I haven't had enough time to be with the best friend I'll ever have and the one you're born with and the one you die with, which is yourself and your soul. Right. And so for me, something like drinking an espresso, it's not because I need the espresso. I can do without it, no problem. That's why I have my threshold limit. My threshold limit is if I go any further than this, I get addicted. And I don't want to be addicted because that's a loss of freedom. Now my life's oriented around coffee, not living. But when I can drink my espresso or vaporize my smoke, and it's a celebration of something that's a gift to me, and I'm having a relationship with myself and time with myself, and I get to listen to my thoughts and look out the window at nature and see the beauty and smell the beauty. Then when I can engage the world, I can be 100% of my 50% of every relationship. And that's so important because, as I teach my students, if you're only 10%, like if I'm having this conversation with you and there's 10% of me that's somewhere else, like wishing I had a coffee and going, oh God, I can't hurry up so I can get my coffee, then I'm 10% here. There's 10% that I'm not accessing, and there's 10% of me that you can't access, which creates a 20% deficit in the relationship. Right. Well, ask yourself this question if you don't think a 20% deficit is very much. If your accountant is 20% wrong in your tax return, how much will it cost you?
Right.
If your paycheck's 20% too small, how much will that affect you?
Right.
If you're making love with someone and they're 20% not there, are you making love? Or are you just masturbating with someone's body?
Right.
Right. So the point I'm making is that the ceremony and the ritual is very, very important. And if we're honest with the things that we're talking about, then the things like the coffee, the tea, or the smoke, or the what have you, they don't become the means by which we live. They become means by which we enjoy living.
Right.
And that's important.
Right, 100%. And I think, thinking back to what you said about the 20%, that 80-20 principle that a lot of people are living by, or, a lot of people use it as it relates to nutrition. I eat well 80% of the time. But the Pareto principle, the original principle was, no, 20% is enough to impact the whole.
It is.
80% of the profit came from 20% of the almond field or whatever it was back in Italy with the Pareto principle, right? So 20% is absolutely enough. And needless to say, Runga is very digital detox. No one's on their phones, etc. But what's really interesting too is like that hour, that ritual, that protecting the first time during your day so you can connect with yourself. We talked about thinking, feeling, and how thinking shuts down feeling and feeling shuts down thinking.
Yeah.
All we do is think.
That's right.
And when we think about even some of the lessons that we're teaching at Runga, sure, maybe some of them you might be able to Google, but it's about feeling them, right?
Yeah.
It's about, you could learn how to, breathe and do a box breathing breath, et cetera, on Google, but it's not about information. There's too much information. It's about feeling into some of this and again, making it kind of our own.
And sometimes, most of the time people get so much information that it actually paralyzes them.
Right.
Information isn't useful unless you can apply it. And if you don't apply information, you don't gain experience. And if you don't gain experience and make mistakes, then you never produce wisdom. So what you end up being is a smart, dumb person,
right?
Which is the kind of people that end up being sick people if they're not careful, right? You find yourself, lots of my patients sit here and give me all sorts of reasons why what I'm telling them isn't right.
Right.
And many times I've just taken off my shirt and sometimes my pants and said, look, I'm almost 60 years old. This is the results of my program. You get undressed for me and let's see what the results of your program, since you seem to know more than your therapist.
Right.
And some people are just so in love with ideas, they don't realize that ideas don't have any power. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. And if you don't actually go through the experience, and some things are easy to watch a video on YouTube, but who's there to tell you when your bottom ribs aren't moving and you're inhaling, or how to mobilize your spine, or the things that you don't realize are an impediment to your breathing that you can't see? It's just like someone who thinks they can go to the gym and lift weights without any coaching.
Right.
Well, they can't see themselves. They can't see behind themselves. Where they're inside their own box. As Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. So you got to get outside of the box. So my point is that, going to HLC1 or finding people that really do wear their knowledge and letting them guide you, you often find that a lot of the information you had, either you didn't know how to apply or it was just not correct because it was taught by people that just copied somebody else and don't realize they're just broadcasting their own misunderstandings. And that is rampant in this information age and internet age.
It's very rampant. And
your next component on our anatomy train is the mindfulness and the meditation. So talk about how you apply these principles in your Runga approach and in your own living philosophy.
Yeah. Well, I think that, again, just to touch on the ritual of the morning one more time, I have said on numerous podcasts just the importance of a 10-minute quiet sit in the morning. And a morning meditation, silent meditation, is just something that is just so powerful and profound that just creates an energy that you will not create in any other way.
Yeah.
And at Runga, we start each day with meditation.
Yeah.
We do a lot of Vipassana mindfulness. My wife is a mindfulness instructor, and she leads a lot of circles and healing circles and daily meditations, and also some Kriya yoga that really just gets people kind of into their body, right? Frees up a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Lets them feel into their emotions and kind of step back from it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that, again, it just fuels all the other things that we've been talking about. It anchors so many of these principles where people are in their bodies, they're in their feeling bodies, they're disconnected from all the things outside of themselves that they're obsessing over on a daily basis. Maybe they have a new perspective on it.
Yeah.
And then they're entering this environment with people that they trust, people they feel safe with, and it all just tends to sink in very, very nicely.
Many people in their mind are so busy trying to get somewhere, always in a hurry. But what they don't realize is that the speed of silence is now.
Right.
It's everywhere and nowhere at the speed of now. So when you actually learn to just relax your mind and let it go and let it empty itself, the answers to the questions you may have had for years show up like lightning bolts effortlessly.
Right.
And you may have spent years trying to find or figure the answer to that out intellectually, working your mind forever, chasing, why do I have this problem? Why doesn't he love me? Blah, 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 blah. But when you go into that sacred place of silence, you realize that it is the epicenter of the action of everything, and all the answers are there.
Yeah.
The wisdom begins there.
We need to make space for it.
You do, and that's that's what no mind really means. The Western culture thinks no mind is a stupid idea. They think,
Right.
oh, you must be a zombie.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't get it.
Speaking of not knowing enough about this universe and this body and this mind to even be able to judge anything that might happen in it.
It's like when I was talking to you about the when I teach rock stacking classes, I give you 28 seconds in that circle with stones, and I know exactly how your mind works. And I know how carefully I have to watch so you don't kill yourself. But someone who's mindful is safe out there because they're paying attention to what they're doing. They're not in a rush. They're in a relationship with the earth, the stones, and the environment, and they have open receptivity. But somebody who's got this idea in their head that they're in a hurry to get to so they can just show everybody how strong or cool they are is very likely to get hurt. And I have had my share of visits from the stone Buddhas with painful messages, and every single time it's when I got either I was in a hurry because I had an appointment and I was trying to finish something, like I got to get this rock stack built, I've got 20 minutes, or I was trying to force something. In other words, my ego was trying to run the show.
Mm-hmm.
And the stone Buddhas are merciless. They'll teach you how to meditate even if it kills you.
Yeah, well, and it's such an amazing practice because I've dabbled a little bit in it,
Yeah.
but never rocks of that size.
When the bigger they are, the more present you got to be, because the consequences of not being mindful are ambulances.
Right, right. And I think there's so few things. And it's so funny because at the beginning, when I first took that trip to Costa Rica 6 or so years ago now, I used to think that I myself wasn't the person that was, quote, good at meditating.
Yeah.
And so whitewater rafting became my dynamic meditation. That's,
Yeah.
I just need to get into the moment. And, I thought that jumping out of planes and whitewater rafting was kind of the answer, but it's so interesting where those can be great. If your mind is really crazy, jump out of an airplane, it'll stop, it'll center it. But this rock stacking was an amazing experience today.
Yeah.
Because these rocks are probably heavier than the weights I lift in the gym.
Oh, hell yeah.
Half the time.
And harder to lift.
And awkward and
Sharp and insects and sharp stones that you can step on if you're not careful, pieces of bark, biting insects, rattlesnakes like to hang out there.
Right.
So you have to have reverence.
There's such a grace.
It is a grace. It's a grace. It's reverence. It's worship. It's creativity. If it's meditation. It's athletic to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And it's and what does it take but a bunch of rocks?
Right.
And the beauty of it is it's something you can do without an attachment to the outcome. I call it unbound play. We're so outcome oriented in our culture. Why are you doing that? I got to get this done. There's always a reason why you've got to do this. But we don't realize that we're very trapped in the rational mind, but the complementary opposite to the rational mind is the unrational. Dancing is not rational. Nobody looks at your dancing and says, your mathematical ratios of hip to arm movements are off there.
Right.
It's not a golf swing, right? Dancing is unrational. And we feel free if we dance without critical judgment of ourselves. We're free. I love to paint because I can light it on fire. I can give it away. I'm not attached to the outcome. It's an act of expressing the child, the little boy in me. Rock stacking, going for a walk and listening to the birds. There's no rational outcome except just being there. And the more we give ourselves permission to engage the unrational, to balance the rational, the easier it is for us to find our center. Because if you just think of it as a teeter-totter, on one end is rational, on the other end is the unrational.
Mm-hmm.
And if the rational is all you got, then that teeter-totter's not moving, and life is movement. And when you balance the rational and the unrational, the teeter-totter holds still, but it's balanced.
Right.
It's level. Right. And when we operate from that place as our place of departure each day and our way of closing the day, then we grow. We have an open-minded approach because we learn in those activities that we get these amazing insights and intuitions that come out of nowhere that our ego would never have thought of by itself. But we come to realize that the more busy our mind is, the more we shut out the messages of the universe that only come when we're open. And really, to be a healthy person at every level means to be open-minded. Open-minded to when your diet needs to change. I could just interviewed Paul Saladino, and one of my questions is, how dogmatic are you about this nose to tail? And he said something beautiful. He said, it's working for me right now. But if it stops working, I'll try something different.
Yeah.
And that's what it means to be open-minded. And that's what I really try to get across to the vegans and the vegetarians, because they're in a closed belief system, and oftentimes by the time they come to see me for help, they have serious health problems. I've seen many of them with cancer. And the paradox is they often use that approach to heal cancer, but they don't realize that what starts off as medicine can become the source of a disease.
Right.
And that's no different than being someone who's fixated on running or has to watch a certain TV show at night or has to have their coffee or the world just comes to an end. And so it's beautiful that you have incorporated all these things. And how long is the RUNGA experience that you're talking about?
So the immersion is 3 nights, 4 days.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, yeah, it's in Napa. It's been in Napa the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And we do local events as well in Venice that are essentially a one day of that Napa experience in Venice. So if folks want to come to a single day, Saturday, spend a day, just, people have said it's like it feels like a week-long retreat in a single day. It's an amazing day. And now we're also doing a lot of private kind of corporate events. If corporations have, private or summits for their company and they want to inject some really high quality wellness programming, we do that, and coaching, consulting. So
before we sort of wrap it all up and you share what's available on your website and any information you want to share, and we're going to offer a discount on a variety of things at the end of the podcast when Penny comes on to share the discount. So there will be some offers for you on Joe's products and the RUNGA experience. I have a question for you.
What's up?
If you knew you were going to die tomorrow and I was going to give you an opportunity to share one message with the world, what would it be?
Oh my gosh.
You can call me Paul.
Paul. I would say, man, it's funny. I got that question hit me pretty hard.
Well, I don't want this to all be so easy that you don't have to get present with yourself.
Yeah. No, I was thinking too when you were talking a minute ago. I was just thinking how early on in life we learn to push down that irrational, right? I was thinking about kids say the darndest things.
Yeah.
And
yes, they do.
because they're present.
You know what? I got to tell you one. Sorry, I have to do this. I'm gonna share with you because you've got a baby on the way. The other day, I asked Mana, who's 3.5. Let's see, he's February the 22nd, so he's close to being 4. The other day, my beautiful little boy, he just looked at me and he said, "I love you, Daddy." And I said, "Will you love me tomorrow?" And he looked and he thought for a second. He goes, "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." And I said, now that is a very wise answer from a less than 4-year-old kid.
Amazing.
And that's true wisdom. And this kid doesn't have enough mind to start thinking about it. He just gave me a good, honest answer right out of the present moment.
Yeah.
I don't know, Dad. Ask me tomorrow.
That might be my answer to your question.
I'll tell you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll tell you tomorrow.
My message to the world will be tomorrow. I'll send it a message from heaven.
Yeah. And I think I would say, to enjoy, like you just said, the dance, right?
Yeah.
To
Layla in
to-
Hindu terminology. Layla is the dance.
Layla,
God
yeah.
is the dancer
God is a dancer.
and the artist.
Just to, I like to say, like, it's healthy till it's stressful.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we take things and ourselves far too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think if I had to leave the world with a message, it would be that. It would just be, remember that this is a dance. It's the long game. It's
is
not,
the long game,
it's
yeah.
not, we need to take every minute as it comes and do the best we can with it.
Yeah.
But the more energy we dissipate into self-absorption or getting fixated on things being a certain way all the time,
Yeah.
then the more distant we get from actually being human and
And
actually
the closer we get to having obsessive compulsive disorder.
the closer we get to not enjoying this life.
Yeah.
And I think that whether it's anything that I've done, it's about getting people to enjoy this life because, I've got some experience with close calls with it being taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And it can happen fast. So the biggest regret imaginable would be to have not done what you can with the time you have.
Or not lived.
Yeah.
I tell people life is a game of love.
Right.
And if you're not loving, then you're not living. And so be aware of when whatever you're doing loses its love. Because when you lose love, you lose connection. And when you lose connection, you're lost.
Right.
And that's a painful place to be. And as the research shows, all the friends on Facebook won't fix it for you.
No. No.
But a real healing event like RUNGA isn't a Facebook event. It's real connection and it's real love. And that's why I asked you, do men cry there?
Yeah.
Because if you feel surrounded by love, men will cry.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I'm an ex-paratrooper, kickboxer, boxer, I earned my badass wings so I could fit in with the silverback gorillas. But when Angie became pregnant with Mana, probably about by her 4th or 5th month, my heart chakra started opening and I would just be watching shows and stuff that would never make me cry. All of a sudden I had tears pouring down my eyes and Penny and Angie were just giggling at me because, they could see the feminine coming alive in me. But, and I didn't want kids. That's the other thing. The old saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him you got a plan.
Yeah.
Or tell her you have a plan would be more accurate.
Yeah.
But just the realization that the universe was trusting me to guide another soul, another breath of God into its own fulfillment, and the deep ceremony and the worship and the realization of that. It was as though he was reaching out and touching me right from the womb, and it was opening things inside of me that were scary for me. It's because oh my God, what would my friends think right now? They would think I was just a pussy. But the reality of it is that I felt so much more whole and so much more alive when those tears started to flow.
Yeah.
Because I realized I was really in touch with the spirit of life itself. And it was something working for money doesn't bring. It's something that you can't even put words to. And I remember when my son Paul Jr. was born, I was only 18, but as I watched him come out of the birth canal, I had my first samadhi. I had the experience of being totally one with the whole universe, and it literally blew my heart and mind wide open, like someone just overloaded a circuit breaker and the whole thing just blew up.
Right.
But in that blow up was the deepest, most profound sense of connection I'd experienced in my life to that point. Fortunately, through Tai Chi, meditation, and the use of plant medicines, I've had hundreds of those experiences. But just if look how many men don't show up to their children's birth because they're too busy. And when you realize what a woman goes through to give birth, to not have her man there,
Right.
that shows that there's confusion about what love really is and what life really is. And so,
Confusion for the baby as well.
of course, yeah, you're entering into into a shamanic journey without a shaman there to guide you, and mom's already deep into her experience and she's working hard to deal with it. The pain of childbirth is enough that scientists say it would kill the average man. A man's nervous system can't take the pain of childbirth. It would collapse them.
Wow.
Women are much tougher creatures than men. And believe me, I've got 2 wives. I know they're much tougher than me. I watched Angie go through some intense labor, man. It was like, I had to use all my breathing techniques to stay present with her because I was feeling so much of her pain. But, life carries lots of pain, but if we learn how to make meaning out of it and we give ourselves permission to find the sacred within ourselves and make friends with our own soul, then we hear the voice of God inside of us and we know that even death is not something that will destroy us. We'll be okay because what breathes us is beyond breath itself. It is the source of breath. It is the emptiness and the fullness of the entire universe, of existence. And when we take time to do these simple rituals, we really realize our oneness with all that is, and that includes each other. And then skin color doesn't matter anymore. Religion and religious differences and political differences, they just become things that make the game interesting, but they're not the reason that we're in the game or the dance. We're here really to live and love and add beauty to the world. And I think experiences like RUNGA are very, very important because there's a lot of people out there, especially executives and people that are so serious about everything, that have forgotten that there's something more important than being serious about making money, and it's called love and connection.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting. And, as you know, I'm 4 months from becoming a dad.
Yeah, congratulations, man.
The interesting thing is we actually found out during RUNGA last year.
Wow.
And so it was on Saturday, and it was right before dinner. And Amelia tells me, and she says, I think I want to tell everyone.
Cool.
And it was just such a kind of testament to the connectedness of this group. And I hope my mother doesn't listen to this because I don't want her to know she was 22nd to know. But
living spontaneously.
But it was just such a beautiful thing. At dinner, we did our usual blessing of the food and toast, and we told the whole group, and it was just such a warm, inviting experience for us, and just such a beautiful memory as it relates to our own kind of realization that this was really happening.
Yeah.
And now, to your point about being 4 or 5 months in, there's a very interesting energy shift in me. And even when you asked me that question about if I died tomorrow, I was like overwhelmed with emotion.
Yeah.
Because
you've got life to live.
I've got life to live here.
Yeah.
And I've got
love to give.
And a little boy on the way.
Yeah.
And so it was
Have you ever thought of naming your boy RUNGA?
No.
Well, it's quite a masculine name.
It is.
And it's obviously an extension of your own being. It's like your first child. RUNGA meaning, you created RUNGA.
Yeah.
It's a product of your own gestation.
I'll run it by Amelia. See what she says.
It's a cool name.
It is a cool name.
Yeah.
And he would be the only one.
He would be the only one. And only daddy and mommy could tell him what it means. And they could show him every day.
Yeah.
I named Mana because I felt so much power coming in this soul. I knew I had a very powerful soul coming. And Mana means life force, it means sacred, and it means effective purpose. His middle name's Bumi, which is Indonesian for of the earth. So his name means life force of the earth.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and boy, is he ever. So any closing comments that you want to share? Penny will offer any offers that you want when you give those to her, but anything you want to say, inspiring or closing comments?
I would just thank people for listening, and I hope that people took away some valuable nuggets from this show. I think there's a lot of free medicine out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, people like you can communicate through mediums like this.
Yeah.
And I think that shows like this that hopefully can really help people get in touch and really kind of, just like we talked about with Runga, just make some of these things your own and use them to live a better life, a more loving life. And if people take anything from this show, I'm really excited about that.
I'm sure they will. I mean, how could you not? Unless if you've listened this long.
Yeah.
It doesn't, even if you don't think you've taken it away, we have planted seeds.
Act on it.
We have planted seeds. Just don't wait till you're in pain or you got a disease to water them would be my request.
Yeah, exactly. And then, to your point, Paul, if folks want to get their hands on some of our mobility balls or journals, things like that we have on the website, we'd be happy to offer your listeners a discount. And
great.
The balls do come with a manual to unlock some of these patterns that we talked about and sync some of that eye movement and breath and unlock the neck, unlock the feet, and activate the diaphragm so that the system can find itself again. Because I think we're in this mismatch. You know, we've got this amazing physiology in constructs and offices and artificial light and concrete jungles that it was not meant for, and it's not impossible to unlock that problem really quickly if we have the right tools.
Well, you've inspired me to share a comment from Rudolf Steiner, because we've talked a lot about getting caught in phones and screens and technology. Steiner said, "Man will continue to invent machines and technologies outside of himself until he realizes that everything he's inventing is a copy of a technology that already exists within himself. The question is, will he destroy himself and the world before he figures it out?" And he said that in the late 1800s.
Wow. We're on our way.
We are on our way, and Runga will help you not destroy yourself.
Yeah.
And realize the technology of the universe is within you, and you're not going to be wise to wait for scientists to figure it out, because you're your own scientist and you got your own laboratory everywhere you go. And it only takes, like you said, a commitment to even just starting your day with love and appreciation for yourself and life. And you'll find that your phone is less important, your drugs are less important, and your distractions are less important, and your addictions are less important. And the dance becomes one of joy.
You said it, Paul.
Aho, great spirit. Thanks for joining me, bud. Thanks for driving all the way down here, and I'm proud of you for bringing a cold espresso on the right day.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure. Tons of fun. And I am very grateful for the experience and your time today. And
great job in the rock garden today.
Hey, thank you so much.
I was testing your Runga. You did good.
Did I do all right?
You did great.
I'm not bleeding. So
no, you're not bleeding. You did good. I actually bled. I was moving that great big rock I was struggling with, and it leaned over, and there was a ledge on it, and it scraped my ankle bone, and I left a little medicine in the garden.
So I wasn't going to try to pick up that rock. I don't know. 300 pounds?
I don't know. Big enough. Big enough. You better be careful. You'll have blood on your ankle.
Well, I don't think that anyone could lift that without a little bit of, it's a massive rock for those listening.
Yeah,
this thing was...
It's kind of like giving birth.
Yeah.
It's a male birth canal.
I thought that was the seat that you use when you get tired of rock stacking.
Yeah.
That's the rock you sit on to take a break.
It would make a nice meditation seat. I hope you guys have enjoyed the podcast. I've had a great time with Joe DiStefano. Runga is beautiful. You're beautiful. Life is beautiful. If you love the podcast, share it. If you didn't, keep it your secret. Lots of love. Talk to you next time.
Thank you, sir.
Oh,
it's a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Living 4D with Paul Chek and today's guest, Joe DiStefano. You can follow Joe on Instagram and Twitter at Coach Joe DI and at Runga Life, or listen to his podcast at coachjoedi.com/stacked. Joe is offering Paul's listeners 20% off the RUNGA mobility balls, and you'll also get a free copy of Joe's ebook, Breathe Better, Move Better, with your purchase. Go to the RUNGA Life shop at rungalife.com/shop/RUNGA-mobility-balls and use the promo code CHECK4D. Follow Paul on Instagram and Twitter at Living4D Podcast or on his YouTube podcast channel, youtube.com/Living4D with Paul Chek. You can watch more on Paul's blog at paulcheksblog.com and the Chek Institute's brand new streaming media site, chekiva.com.